Y'all ready? I'm about to invite y'all into my business like y'all have never known. I don't care how well you know me. Y'all don't know this. So, when I was going through my divorce, my ex-husband threatened me that if I tried to leave, he would get my brother locked up in prison. Now, that was in July. That was when the first anonymous tip went to the FDLE. Now, because they're talking about somebody I'm married to, I know where he was and when he was. And in every place that he traveled for that year, he put in an anonymous tip against my brother. Now, I got all this on paper, every address where he was. He probably doesn't know. Anyways, at some point, these two became co-workers. And at that point, there was an exchange of enough information to solidify these false charges. So now you're talking about a year later. The FDLE shows up at our door. Maybe it wasn't quite a year, about 6 months. Anyways, the FDLE shows up. They identify themselves as FBI agents. They have their hands on their weapons the whole time. They insist on talking, which became an interrogation pretty quick. They physically wouldn't let us move throughout our own home. They seized property that day after determining that there wasn't any cause to do that. They looked around, a legal search and seizure on that day. They had no warrant to do so, just pure intimidation. Looked and searched, determined that there was nothing there, but they're going to take a few things, take it back for testing and see if they turn anything up. Of course, they show up later with a post-dated warrant for search and seizure, claiming that they did determine on that day that they found enough to come back and seize property, which they had already seized. They determined that they had found enough to issue a warrant for arrest. I took all of this evidence of the false reports, the origins of the information that were exchanged, which became enough for them to initiate coming to the address for this illegal search and seizure and interrogation. I took all that to them, to the IG's office, the governor's office, the state IG, and I was returned broken and damaged evidence. So now we're all the way in to a court hearing with months worth of a false report, or a year's worth of false reports, a false warrant, a post-dated search and seizure warrant, evidence, physical evidence of all of this, and it goes into court. Now they slapped everybody with a gag order against my ex. We couldn't bring him up, even with all the evidence that we already had that this is where it was coming from. The threat to falsify these reports was made in front of roommates, so we not only have physical evidence that this was falsified, but we have witnesses that this was threatened and initiated on that day from that address where the initial report was made. We got slapped with a gag order that we couldn't mention any of that in court. There was 3 different court orders that went through that eliminated all the evidence from being shown in court that could prove innocence. Now, it was blocked in court because of court proceedings, but that's not going to stop it from being presented in front of a parole board, because you see obviously all the evidence that could prove innocence was thrown out, so this person got about 30 years. The only thing argued in court was whether or not the search and seizure was legal because of a post date, even though that the date that they claimed to do the search and seizure, they had arrived with other agencies who can claim that they didn't see any of that happen. One of the things I wanted to say about that again is that when this evidence is presented, outside of court. And it proves that somebody's been serving all this time under a false conviction. I want you to know that they know that. They knew that when they did it. They knew that this would come out eventually, and they know that a false conviction could award somebody about $150,000 for every year that they've been in there. But that's taxpayer money. That's not their issue. You see, every agent and every judge, and there was two, one of them was tampering with the jury, I know. Every attorney that was involved, they know this, but it's not their problem. It's your problem. It's your tax money. And whether or not somebody goes down the river for, decades isn't their problem, as long as they get the advancement and the money and the promotion that they feel like. I believe one of those agents who misidentified themselves and presented themselves as an FBI agent did in fact get a promotion into that agency. So when I presented all the evidence I had, the physical evidence, which I have right next to me, is when I presented that to the FBI, they responded by telling me that it was political and there wasn't anything that they could do about it, even though, the FBI would never get involved in something that was political. But I think that about sums it up.